Hello, everybody. This is going to be another video discussion, and the topic for today is botany and photosynthesis. Okay, so a lot of you may have already heard about what photosynthesis is from school, and you probably already know the different functions and the different processes that occur in this topic. So I'm still going to discuss it because I really got inspired by plants just this morning, and I thought that maybe this will be a good topic to discuss, to explain potentially for other people to learn what photosynthesis is for those who have no prior knowledge about it, okay? So let's first start off with photosynthesis. What is photosynthesis? Let's define photosynthesis, okay? So photo in Greek just means light, okay? Photo in Greek just means light, and synthesis and also in Greek means to put together, okay? So photosynthesis is basically just putting together light, and I think that is in itself very self-explanatory already. And uh, and uh, that's about the origin of the word itself. But photosynthesis is basically just a process or a feature that plants and many different species have in order to create their own food. Unlike us carnivores, we eat other animals, okay? And obviously, plants do not eat animals. They eat the own food that they create from their own bodies. So, what is the importance of photosynthesis? Synthesis. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about that. I got a little bit. What is the importance of photosynthesis? Okay, the importance of photosynthesis is huge. Okay, if we didn't have photosynthesis, we may not even be. We may not already have been living for this long. Okay, because photosynthesis, plants rely on it, and as you may know, plants are primary food source of this entire planet. If we didn't have plants to give other animals food for us to in turn eat the animals, we couldn't eat at all. Okay, and we would all basically not even exist if photosynthesis didn't exist. Okay, so that's the importance of it. Photosynthesis is also prominent in industries like industries like fossil, like relating to fossil fuel, oil, and basically natural gases like oxygen. Okay, we also need oxygen to breathe. So photosynthesis is the process that gives us the oxygen that we need to breathe. Okay, so now let's talk about how photosynthesis really works. Okay, now we're going to get a little bit in depth here, but just bear with me. Okay, just follow me. Okay, so this is going to be the photosynthesis process equation. Okay, and I censored the parts of it that we're going to be answering for now. It's a little bit of a trivia, but let's start off with the first box. Okay, with the first box right here, with the first sensor box. Okay, so as you may already know, or for those of you that don't know, this photosynthesis equation basically just entails how photosynthesis works and what inputs and outputs it does. So let's start off with the inputs first. Okay, with the inputs on the left side of the arrow right here. Um, so we're going to start off with carbon dioxide and water. Okay, photosynthesis starts off with carbon dioxide and water, but let's expand a little bit deeper on that. The exact chemical compounds that'll describe these carbon dioxide or water will be six 6 carbon dioxides, okay, 6, so 6CO2, okay. And you may be wondering, what are these? Okay, these are basically just chemical notations of what these represent. Okay, so carbon dioxide is 6CO2. This the very biggest letter, the very biggest number right here. On the very left side is 6. That means you need 6 carbon dioxides, and this is what we call, I believe it's a coefficient. I believe it's yes, I believe it's a coefficient, and this will be the subscript. Okay, so we have 6 carbon dioxides, and we need 6 carbon dioxides and plus water. So, if you may have already realized, the chemical notation for water will be H2O, and for this we need 6 water molecules. That just means we need 6 carbon dioxide molecules and 6 water molecules. So 6 H2O. Okay. To start the photosynthesis process, we need 6 carbon dioxide molecules and 6 water molecules. Okay. But aside from that, we also need, as you may have already seen this illustration, we need the sunlight. Okay, we also need the sunlight. Okay, we need sunlight in order for this to work. Okay, in other words, this is the first part of photosynthesis, and this is going to be the part wherein oxygen is made. Oxygen and glucose is made, but we're going to dive deeper on that because this doesn't tell the whole story. This is just basically a simplification of what photosynthesis is. So we have sunlight over here, and now we have a leaf over here. What do you think this leaf is? Okay, what do you think this leaf represents? And that is going to be chlorophyll. Okay. So what is chlorophyll? It's a very big term, but it really is very simple. It's just basically the pigment that are inside the leaves of trees or plants or whatever. It's a pigment that absorbs sunlight and basically starts the whole photosynthesis the whole synthesis process. And chlorophyll is located inside what we call the organelle. The organelle is basically just you could imagine organs, okay? Like it is basically just a little subunit of cells that are inside of the plant. Okay, that's the cells that make up the plant, and the chlorophyll is basically just a pigment that makes the leaves green, and also where photosynthesis mainly happens. Okay, and we're going to discuss the anatomy of chloroplasts later as well. So now we have the very last part, which is the output, and if we remove this, we could see glucose and oxygen. As I stated earlier, the output will be glucose and oxygen. So what is the chemical notation for glucose in the first place? Okay, so the chemical notation for glucose will be C6. Oh, sorry about that. Let me just write a little bit better. Okay, you got C6, H12, and then 12 O6. Okay, so this is the chemical notation for glucose, which is basically just sugar, basically just a scientific word for sugar. Okay, so we have C6, H12, O6. And what about oxygen? Well, as you may have already noticed, oxygen is O2, just O2. Okay, and I believe this will make a 6 O2, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, this is what it basically entails. Okay, so now let's move on to the chloroplast. As I was stating earlier, the chloroplast is basically just the powerhouse of photosynthesis, wherein the chlorophyll exists in, where the chlorophyll resides in. And we can see right here, this is a depiction of the chloroplast. Let's take a little bit let's take this sensor box off, and we could see that this is relating to the outer membrane. Okay, this is the outer membrane of the chloroplast. Basically, just houses what's inside the chloroplast itself. So this is, let's remove this. This is the inner membrane. Okay, let's remove that. This is the inner membrane, which is basically just protecting whatever is inside the chloroplast. Okay, okay. So now we have these little pancakes over here. What are these pancake-looking slabs over here? These are what we call the thylakoids. Okay, this is where most of the chlorophyll exists. As we may have already realized, chlorophyll is needed in photosynthesis. It basically where chlorophyll photosynthesis happens, or aka the Calvin cycle. But we'll delve into the Calvin cycle later. We can see that inside the inner membrane. Inside the inner membrane of the chloroplast, we can see this little circular slabs over here. We can call these the thylakoids. Okay, very sure that's the thylakoids. Okay, that's the thylakoids, and the thylakoids are packed with these little chlorophylls. Okay, these little pigments that make the leaves green, and this is going to be, as we can see here, this little floor right here. Okay, this little floor right here that stores these little slabs is called the stroma. Sorry, I'm very sorry about that. This is actually stroma. Okay, so this is stroma, and this will be the stomata. I'm sorry, I got that wrong as well. But this will be the stroma, and this will be the granum. Okay, I'm not going to expand on the stroma and granum because I think they're frankly irrelevant to the discussion. But I think that'll be a great opportunity to actually learn what the anatomy of the chloroplast is. But we're not going to expand more or deeper into the stroma or granum because I don't think they're very relevant. Okay, so how does photosynthesis actually happen beyond this photosynthesis process equation that we showed you earlier? Okay, so for this we have these little four pictures. Okay, and these three pictures right here depict trees, algae, and bacteria. Okay, the cute little bacteria right there. Okay, so we have the sun. Okay, all of these species, these are not the only species that could exist that could potentially benefit from photosynthesis or use photosynthesis. Okay, but these are just the general species that I believe that I've read that utilizes photosynthesis. So the first one is trees. Okay, the first one is trees. The second one is algae and bacteria. And all of these species, they need the sun. Okay, they need the sun in order to create their own food. If they didn't have the sun, let's say the sun just automatically disappeared. They would just disappear one by one as well. So we need the sun for these three very, very important species to exist. Okay, so now let's dive deeper into the photosynthesis itself, the Calvin cycle. The Calvin cycle is basically just another part of photosynthesis. This is the stage 2, if you would call it that, the stage 2 of photosynthesis, and this is where light is not needed. Okay, this is where light is not needed in plants. It basically just happens in the plants themselves in order to create the glucose and the sugar, or aka the sugar. Okay, so now we have the Calvin cycle. As you may see, it looks very nerve-wracking. It has a lot of labels to it, but it's basically very, very simple. Okay, so let's say that you have, okay, so what basically happens here is that in the first stage, okay, once the stomata, or the tiny pores that are inside the leaves of the trees or the plants absorb carbon dioxide. Okay, they absorb the carbon dioxide, and they are basically just going to have this enzyme. What is this enzyme? This enzyme is called Rubisco. We don't need to know the whole notation of Rubisco, but Rubisco as an enzyme basically just attaches the molecules, the carbon dioxide molecules into a sugar molecule, into an already placed sugar molecule inside the leaf, in order for it to then be turned into this. Okay, so let's go to stage 2, which is reduction. Okay, and reduction basically just entails that afterwards, okay, after they get the carbon, okay, hold on, let me just. Yeah, I'm very sorry about that. But before we turn into the stage 2 of the Calvin cycle, we have to first realize what happens, what are the results, the outputs of the first light-dependent stage, or the light-dependent stage of the photosynthesis. Okay, so what happens is basically, okay, after they get the water molecules, they basically just split the water. Okay, after the leaves. Okay, let me just draw a good looking leaf right here. Let's say that the water molecules have already entered the leaf. I'm very sorry about that. Very sorry about the drawing. Okay, so let's say that the water molecules have already entered the leaf, and okay, these are water molecules. They've already entered the leaf. What the inside of the leaf or the stomata will be, the chlorophyll, what it basically does is it splits these water molecules into what we call hydrogen ions. Okay, hydrogen ions, electrons, and oxygen. Hold on, let me just this will be the electron. Okay, so we can see we got a negative little negative charge over there, and we can have the hydrogen ions, the electrons, and the oxygen. That oxygen that we need. Okay, we got the oxygen. Okay, we got hydrogen ions, oxygen, hydrogen ions. I believe it looks like this. It's a H with a plus on the top. Okay, so we got oxygen, and we got electrons. Okay, and what basically does is after they split the water molecules into these 3 compartments over here, we got hydrogen ions, we got oxygen, we got electrons. What the plant basically does, it just expels the oxygen outside because they don't need this. Okay, that they don't need it anymore. And what happens to the hydrogen ions and the electrons is basically they do what we call a electron transport chain, but we're not going to elaborate on that because it's a little bit complicated right here. As you can see, the electron transport chain, and this is basically where the hydrogen ions. Okay, you can see right here the hydrogen ions and hold on, the electrons. Okay, the electrons and the hydrogen ions basically just mingle with each other in order to create what we call the products of the light-dependent reactions, which are the ATP. Let me just draw it. Okay. Okay. We have over here, we have ATP. This is what the first stage of the photosynthesis does with the light-dependent reactions, the ATP and NADPH. I believe that's NADPH. Okay. I may have misspelled it, but I think that's okay. Okay. ATP and NADPH. What these ATP and NADPH basically does, it supports the growth of the plant. Okay. You can see right here, NADPH. Okay. 2 higher energy carrier molecules basically just helps with the second part, the light independent reactions of plants. Okay, so we have now the Calvin cycle, as we have already previously discussed earlier. The carbon dioxide molecules that are going inside the stomata, they are transferred and attached to existing sugar molecules by the enzyme Rubisco. by what we call via what we call a carbon fixation in the stage one of the Calvin cycle. So now we have the stage two, which is reduction. So what happens to these little carbon compounds? These little carbon compounds, they basically just they basically just cut this up into three into these little molecules, what we call G3P. So little sugar molecules. I believe it's three sugar molecules. We can just check to see here if that is right. Okay, so we have here the G3P. Okay, yeah, I see three carbon sugar molecules. Okay, three carbon sugar molecules, which we may call G3P. G3P. So we have G3P. Okay, this process we have G3P. What basically just three carbon sugar molecules after we use the ATP that came from the first stage of the photosynthesis. They use this ADP and NADPH in order to create these three carbon sugar molecules from the carbon dioxide. Okay, and that's what stage two is. That's what stage two is, the reduction phase of the Calvin cycle. So now we have stage three, which is the regeneration of RUBP. Okay, so afterwards, after they turn the carbon dioxide into three carbon sugar molecules, what happens is two molecules of G3P are combined to create glucose. And this G3P that we're talking about is basically just the foundation. If we get two G3Ps, this will be the foundation of the glucose. Okay, and we can just go back to this photosynthesis process equation. We can see that glucose is right there. That is the output of photosynthesis, and the Calvin cycle just purely states that two GGPs will be needed, two carbon sugar molecules will be needed in order to create glucose, and that is what happens in stage three of the Calvin cycle. Okay, so afterwards, that's basically it. That's basically a summary of the Calvin cycle. That's basically a summary of the Calvin cycle and the stage two of the light independent processes that happen in photosynthesis. We have already discussed the stage one, which is the light dependent, which we can see over here. Okay, and the stage two is light independent reactions, which is the Calvin cycle, which happens inside the stomata, the leaves. Okay, so that's basically it for photosynthesis. Okay. This was going to be a very brief video, but hopefully this will be this will suffice as a detailed introduction to what photosynthesis is. Okay, so thank you for listening.